Thanks, Emerson, and thanks to the Division of Human Studies for hosting the Bergman Forums. How's the sound? Yes? Great. Okay. Yeah, as Emmer said, I'm going to be reading from my second book of poems, Roleplay, which just came out in July. And the book consists almost entirely of poems that I've written since I've been at Alfred. So I'll get to some very Alfred poems in the second part of the reading. What I thought I would do today is sort of shape the reading into two parts. I've got my little subtitle down here that is a reading of personal, I should say, and persona poems. I think the personal doesn't need so much explanation, but persona poems maybe. Basically, I think there's often an assumption with poetry that whatever the poet writes is quote-unquote true, and that means it is autobiographical. And I would like to say that for me, at least, that is not the case, as you will see. I like to write in the voices of characters, or dramatis personae is the title of a course that Ben Howard created that I've taken over since I came to AU, where the students and I talk about writing through the voices of created characters, either whether you create them yourself, or if these are characters from film, or literature, or pop culture, or historical personages, or what have you. I like to do a lot of those. I think that's kind of fun, to get out of my own head a little bit. So there are a lot of persona poems in this book. That's not all that's in there, but one of the themes, like we talk about in English, is about identities or roles. So the first poem, I think, serves as a good introduction to that idea. First poem I'm going to read is called The Costume Party. Yeah, some recognizing laughs from over there. I'm the faculty advisor for Sigma Tau Delta, which is the English Honor Society, and every year we have a literary costume party at my house. So the students come dressed as authors or characters. Yes, we've got Hester Prynne up here. There's a Hobbit, The Bluest Eye from Toni Morrison, The Red Death. My personal favorite, Robert Genio and Melissa Ryan. Dylan's smiling a little too much, but still pretty good. So the first poem in the book, and the first one I'll read, is inspired by this party that we have each year with the students, and a thing that happened one time. So this is the costume party. A Mad Hatter, a star-bellied Sneetch, a couple of flappers, Zelda, Virginia Woolf, my honor students who've pillaged the thrift store racks for literary costumes shuck their coats and tell me to guess who they're supposed to be. Hester Prynne is easy. Quentin Compson's suit is torn and an iron hangs from his belt. Then Kate, a girl I don't know well, clicks into the room in black Mary Janes, a pencil skirt, a sweater. Is this a costume? Has she just come from work? I don't know what to say except, I like your stockings. She smirks. Yeah, you're all quicker than I am, right? I look again. Isn't her blonde hair a little darker, with newly side-swept bangs? The stocking's teal pattern climbing her thigh? Finally, I laugh. Of course, she's me, or who she thinks I am. Dr. Gray, with her long hair and sensibly sexy clothes. Dr. Gray, who's fighting adulthood and age by showing off her legs and partying with undergrads. Dr. Gray, who can take a joke. Kate and I laugh. Tonight, she's me. And who am I supposed to be? Somebody else. Somebody else. Okay. So there's a theme. It really took me like 10 minutes to figure out who Kate was supposed to be. The next one I'll read is a persona poem, so in the voice of a character, and the character Helen from Greek mythology, and I always have to remind students that her last name is not of Troy. that Helen was from Sparta, and that after the events of the Trojan War, she had to go back to Sparta, and back to that husband that she seems not to have particularly liked. So I picked this image off an urn where you see Menelaus coming into Troy, and he's got his sword in his hands, and she's like, "Oh, honey, I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for rescuing me." So I've written a poem in the voice of Helen. It's called Helen of Sparta, and I think the only thing I need to gloss in here is that Lacedaemon is another name for Troy. Menelaus is her husband that she doesn't like. He's kind of a jerk. And the other characters are from the Iliad and the Odyssey. So this is spoken by Helen after she had to go home from the Trojan War, and she's stuck with this husband again. Helen of Sparta. 20 years and nothing's changed. The man I married is still that man, though other husbands in bedrooms overlooking richer shores have come between that union and today. Lacedaemon stinks of vinegar and goats, as it always did. Menelaus still picks his nose in court, still splits the bones of pigs to scoop out marrow with his thumb, and still wipes his beard on skirts of serving girls. Atop me in his bed, he calls me whore, though that, too, is mere consistency. The only thing that's changed is my own heart, no longer a girl's overripe with lust for boys with lapis eyes and golden hair. Now I am a queen, obedient and calm. When my husband entertains our drunken guests with tales of his strumpet wife, claims I bedded every prince of Troy until old Priam, too, demanded a turn. When my lord and husband says these things, I smile, submit, retire to my quiet loom. I do not drop a single linen stitch. My jealous daughter, too, despises me. Perhaps if I had borne a son, perhaps this one. Telemachus downstairs awaits his gifts. Silver cups and cloaks will send to Ithaca, a poor substitute for a father lost. I'll take the boy aside and whisper that his father, like myself, is merely delayed by pleasure and soft beds, that lust is destined to subside. I'll sigh into his ear, his golden hair that smells familiar with oils. I'll breathe that man and wife will be rejoined. Together they'll preside, looking down from hard wooden chairs, side by side, as if nothing at all had changed. Marriage is a subject that I keep coming back to. I'm a little ambivalent about it. So here's the similar subject through a different character, Nancy Drew. I like to play what if. So what if Nancy Drew were to actually grow up? How would it have gone? And I decided, not that well. That being all kinds of spunky and adventurous and all that might not have actually made her happy. So that led to this poem. Nancy Drew 45 posts on Match.com. So the poem takes the form of one of these ads and uses some of those cliches. I think there's nothing really to be explained in here. If you catch a reference that you're not sure you get, it's probably from the Nancy Drew stories. So this is Nancy Drew 45, posts on Match.com. Former girl detective seeks new mystery. Looking for fun and possible LTR. That's long-term relationship. About myself. I'm single, twice divorced. Long story short, the high school sweetheart came out of the closet. The father surrogate only wanted to bounce me on his knee. I'm self-employed, still slim and Titian-haired. When I was young, I ran a little wild, chasing after thrills and wicked men, mad to drag the shadows into light. Now I'm home, back in River Heights. I'm tired of danger, of bombs and hot pursuits, of being locked in closets, left for dead. But I miss the rush, holding my breath in the dark, listening for footsteps, feeling my heartbeat race. Maybe, I hope, that's where you come in. You, intrepid, fit, attractive, yes, looks do matter. Bright, but not a brain, content to let the woman lead the way. If life is like a dark and winding stair, you follow as your lover holds the flashlight. Turn-ons. Lightning. Crosswords. Antique clocks. Secluded inns. Pineapple daiquiris. Pedicures. Estate sales. Roleplay. Masks. Turn-offs. Liars. Secrets. Drugs/disease. Men with ponytails. The B word. Guns. Reply with recent pic. Kids okay. My heart's a broken locket. Do you hold the other half? Let's investigate. She's so cute. Okay. So another one from literature, kind of. Yeah, that's for Rob Virginio. Mm-hmm. You're welcome, Rob. Sorry. The speaker in this poem is the devil, and it's just basically his to-do list. And I sort of decided I wanted to play with the idea of what if he did things that seemed ostensibly good, but you could easily imagine them going badly. So, yeah, simple conceit. The devil plans his day. Up at daybreak with the crows. Starbucks. Tell the anorexic goth barista how beautiful she looks, and overtip. Get the car hosed down by high school kids and donate $30 toward their trip by bus to marching band nationals. Pick up a hitchhiker. Tell her it's safe. Deliver Meals on Wheels to widowers and shut-ins. Hamburger steak, a little dry. Meet a girl at the mall. Talk a while. She'll never have another kiss so warm, so intimate. She'll always wonder why. Coax a stray kitten to the porch of a single mother and child who'll fall in love it like his own soul, until, napping on the engine block, it's chewed to bloody rags when mommy starts the car. The child will try to believe it's not her fault. Judge a pile of poetry manuscripts. Award the prize to the emptiest, the most abstract. To others, scratch a note, so close. Hate that. Early to bed with the snakes, pausing to give thanks for this world of manifold delight, for the blessing of such good work upon it. My mother did that to a kitten I loved one time, and I've forgiven her. Yeah. Okay. One more from literature. The Time Machine is a fun book. Oh, wait. Not those time machines. That one. From the 60s movie, there's the one that I have in mind, where it's got that very intricate, really beautiful time machine that's so Art Deco and has that great wheel in the back, and it's just so darn pretty. And the poem has an epigraph from The Time Machine by Wells, and I put it up here. The epigraph is the time traveler speaking in the time machine, and he says, "I'm damned if it isn't all going. This room and you and the atmosphere of every day is too much for my memory. Did I ever make a time machine or a model of a time machine? Or is it all only a dream? They say life is a dream, a poor precious dream at times, but I can't stand another that won't fit." So this isn't exactly a persona poem. He's not the speaker, but I'm sort of asking questions about the time traveler, the time machine. For reasons that have nothing to do with function, he makes it beautiful. A glittering thing of nickel, ivory, pearly quartz. Golden bars curve out like Sphinx's paws, or the slim runners of a Victorian sleigh. The deco wheel tilts like a parasol. Will Neanderthals be impressed by his burnished scarlet Spanish leather chair? Will the children of a horrid future coo and sigh, reward him with blossoms? The time traveler is compelled to see what man has done and made, will do, what it will make of him, his fine machine. He slips his arms into his smoking jacket. Meanwhile, his body ticks its span of days relentlessly forward, even as his mind turns more and more toward its own past. The time machine spins, grinding its gears. Yeah. One of the things I really like about Alfred is how willing everybody is to help you out. So if you're traveling, people will volunteer to take care of your pets or your plants or your cats or house sit or whatnot. I've done some house sitting for friends. They've done it for me, and it's much appreciated. It doesn't always go terribly smoothly. And this one came after I was checking on actually the DeGraff's plants one time, and there was a basil plant that was just suicidal, just determined to end itself on my watch. So hence the cartoon. So again, I play what if. You know, what if the house sitter starts taking her responsibilities a little too seriously? So this is a house sitter's note. This is just taking the form of the note left behind. Welcome home. I hope your trip was fun. Around here, things were quiet. The plants did very well, except the potted basil, which wilted every day like it wanted to die. I put it in the ground beside the porch. Hope that's okay with you. The cats and I were instant friends. They'd curl up on my lap or on my legs while I stretched out on your couch and read your magazines. They slept with me at night in your bed. When I ran out of clothes, I wanted to borrow some of yours, but they were kind of snug. I lost 11 pounds, eating only your salad, drinking your tea. I chopped the toes out of your shoes. The mail is on the table. I took the liberty of writing to your teenage son at camp. His letters sounded lonely, and even though he's far too shy, like you, to come right out and say so, I think he had a wicked crush on a counselor who's much too old for him. I told him that we loved him and closed at 10. When I got the midnight call that your dad had died, I took the car, your good Kentucky bourbon, and drove out to the lake. I wept and drank that warm bitterness, and when I smashed the bottle on the rocks, the bits of glass arced across the headlight's yellow beam like far-off shooting stars. Finally, surrounded by the photographs of your friends and loved ones, I softly passed away in your bed. It's all right. It was my time to go. And now you'd never know that I was there in your tidy house, your green and purring space, except for a ghost of bourbon in the air and, on your pillow, a single foreign strand. It gets a little bit Rose Framley at the end there. Okay. This is the last of the persona poems I'll read, and then I'll switch gears a bit. I taught an honors class on zombies a few years ago. Students talked me into it. And it went pretty well. It was fun, but I had to watch a whole lot of zombie movies as research. Most of them not very good. But there are certain cliches. You know, there's always a little band of survivors, and they always have to hole up somewhere, and then there's an unlikely romance, and there's usually one person who tries to take control of the situation. That person gets horribly killed. You know, there's these little tropes. So this is a poem of sort of using and sort of mocking some of those cliches about the zombie movies. There is a bit of strong language in here, so I apologize if there are sensitive ears. And where's Dylan? You're over there. This is the one in Tercerima. Dylan has an assignment. Okay. So this is Love Among the Zombies, and here's the speaker is, zombie apocalypse survivor addressing the beloved. It's not the way you clean your rifle sight with vinegar, or how you used your axe the second day to hack a ragged skylight, nor how you smile and let yourself relax a little as you watch me honing knives. When first we met, seeking the Adirondacks and safety, fleeing the city for our lives, I thought you were a jackass, the guy who takes control of fuck all, lord of the barely survived. Turns out Mr. I'm in charge was Jake, my husband. He hid the bite wound on his wrist and called me a bitch before he died. At daybreak, when he revived, I took the shot but missed. I fired again but didn't hit the brain. He grabbed me, leaning in for a final kiss. Your hatchet gleamed, and blood like warm champagne splashed across my face. You wiped my lips, then helped me burn the body with propane. Now, I watch the way you rock your hips when you check the barricades. I always hold the ladder so I can watch your ass, the rips in your jeans as you carry water down. This old convenience store has medicine and food enough to last us through the winter's cold. Our booby traps and ghoul alarms are crude, but loud enough to rouse us from the bed. Let us love, enjoy our solitude, let loose with screams and moans to wake the dead. Okay. So that's the first part that I wanted to read, the persona part. And now I'll move to the personal part. I went to Facebook and made a little word cloud. You know, you can do that of your recent status updates to sort of get a visual for the personal. Yeah. At least what I'm complaining about on Facebook, I suppose. And some other little things. You know, Bella Corcoran Math, who won the Wit and Wisdom, is going to be giving a Bergen Forum soon. I don't know why some of that stuff is up there. I don't know why Beyonce is so big. I don't really talk about her all that much. But writing about the personal is a little trickier for me, but you know, it can be done. So I'll start with some poems about my family, who are fortunately not here to be embarrassed. The students in Lola, the Language of the Literary Art, the course that Susan Morehouse and I co-teach, often get an assignment that I also use it in my poetry workshops, where they have to write a metaphorical portrait of a person. So they tell you in the title or in the first line, hey, this is a metaphorical portrait of a person, but then they have to stick within the bounds of the metaphor. They have to let the thing be a thing. And I thought it was cool, so I wrote a bunch of them myself. So there's a series of maybe about 6 poems in the book that are portraits of family members and of myself and a cat that I used to have, an evil little cat, that are written in these metaphors. So the first one is a portrait of my father as the corner bar. So there's my dad. Here he is when he's a little boy. I just love that picture, holding that. And in this one, that's from a few years ago. We're probably both a little tipsy. But I think you'll get an idea of the kind of person he was from this poem. This is the portrait of my father as the corner bar. The hardwood floors have lost their shine, but gained a certain honeyed softness born of use. Sunlight bends through tinted windows veined with lead. The wainscoting is coming loose. The drafts, not unkind, are underscored by whiskey, leather, sandalwood, and mace, as if a rakish vagabond had stored his tired bags behind the fireplace. There's always music, some discs overplayed. Debussy, Dylan, Davis, Dire Straits. Each double shining bottled is arrayed for what it holds or how it coruscates. As for the regulars, a green-eyed cat, 2 friends, at least 1 blonde worth looking at. So that's Dad. Then there's Mom. Old picture. There's me. I was cute. My mother is a worrisome person. And one of the things that she worries about is traffic. And she talks a lot about it. She lives in Birmingham, Alabama, which really isn't that bad. But she likes to talk about alternate routes and ways you should go and how early you should leave and how to avoid the mall. And this could go on for hours. So I wrote this one as the portrait of my mother as the rush hour traffic report. And after the book was published, I sent copies to my mother and to my sister, and my mother just, said to me, I didn't understand it, but I'm sure it was very good. And then she called my sister and said, that poem about me, what does it mean? But my sister was on my side. I don't know, Mom. No idea. Certainly nothing to do with the traffic. So this is a portrait of my mother as the rush hour traffic report. It's murder on the interstates tonight. From high above in Action Chopper 9, the gridlocked lanes seem filled with firelight, like torches of a mob waiting in line. The highways aren't much better. Even routes that only locals know. The 2-lane street behind the mall, the road that overshoots your former high school, always spell defeat. Why didn't you leave earlier? Why didn't you plan ahead? We told you how difficult it is just getting by. Action Chopper 9 can't help you now. What's so great out there that you have to roam? Be safe, be warm, don't suffer, stay home. Yeah. I don't know, Mom. It's a poem. It could be anything. Right? But then there's a little payback. My sister, there we are in our cuter days, and here we are at a recent Christmas. She's been on me all my life. She needs to give me a little space. She has an MFA in theater, so she is a bartender. A good one. She's won awards. So this is a portrait of my sister as a marble ashtray, and picture it being set at one of these bars where she has to work. Thick and darkly veined as river ice, and yes, as cold. It rests its heavy base upon the table edge, serving vice without reproach, just silent Spartan grace. In countless films, noir, and TV shows, such simple bowls taken up in passion have brained 100 heiresses and foes. This kind of death comes in and out of fashion, but power always lies in the potential, the sudden turn within the everyday. It sits, meanwhile, seeming inconsequential, taken all for granted, the passive ashtray mutely serving the smokers without a claim, both holding and extinguishing the flame. All right, that's enough of those family poems. I moved to Alfred in 2006 and was very welcomed and made some good friends. And I bought a house the following year in a charming little Alfred neighborhood. Happy to be a homeowner. And one of the things that I learned to like that I hadn't had a whole lot of experience with before was gardening. A lot of the neighbors on our street do a little gardening. Some of them do a lot of gardening. Professor Westacott, who gave me such a kind introduction, has a really beautiful garden. Well-tended, well-maintained fences, really top-notch. And I've got one too in the backyard. You know, it's a little nicer. And it's Alan Grove here is my co-gardener. He does all the really difficult work. I usually stand around and go, Lord, it's hot, and take pictures. But those of you who are gardeners may remember the late blight we had a few years ago and how awful it was, where the tomato plants just died and potato plants just died, and you had to rip them out of the ground. And I cried a little bit. It was just pathetic not to have tomatoes. So I wrote a poem about that. This is a very Alfred poem called Late Blight. Mornings in late May, dew ascends in smoky plumes from sun-struck roofs while I bend low, my hands deep in fresh-tilled earth. Wrinkled beet seeds nestle in rows beside the garlic and spring onions' tender spears. The last of fall's potatoes have gone crazy in basement isolation, shooting out identically pale roots and stems. I cut them into soft, bristly chunks and bury them in furrows mulched with hay. I leave plenty of room for kale and chard, nudge the climbing peas toward the fence. Tomato seedlings, toughening against a late frost, bask in greenhouse sun. I straighten, arch, pull against the ache. Warmth, light, calls of chickadees around the feeder, smells of earth and grass. Mornings such as this are reason enough to go on living. Tonight I'll have to cut my fingernails to rid them of the dirt. Then one day in August, a single Roma overloaded with green fruit wilts as if it alone were kissed by early frost. Then all the Romas turn limp and spotted brown. Then the cherries, heirlooms, early girls, and all my plants must be uprooted, bagged, denied even the humble dignity of compost, hauled away with the rest of the trash. I gather up the fallen, blighted fruit so there may be no seed of return. And I was not wrong before. These small earthly pleasures are all that we are offered, and they shall ever come to such an end. That's a happy poem. I'll read a happier one. I like teaching poetry. But you find yourself saying things over and over and realize, oh, shoot, I've got some of those little tics that I used to make fun of my own professors for. Dang, I do that too. And one of my little tics is talking about Metaphorland. When the students start to get into some figurative language in their poems and we're not quite sure what's going on, I'll say, I think we're in Metaphorland here. I don't think this is meant to be literally true. We've gone off and, over there. So again, I played What If. Okay, Metaphorland. Let's make it a real place where the students are creating symbols or metaphors, and they've all got significance, the way that we close read a poem and say, oh, what does that represent? And trying to make that like a little town. Okay. So this is Metaphorland. We spend a lot of time here, my students and I. We stroll through groves of oaks, dogwoods, cherries, and full-tilt blossom. We rank the sun from glistening chariot to baleful eye. Like farmers, we argue over what the clouds portend. We scan the sky for pigeons and hawks. In town, we linger at lonely park benches, empty bus stops, florist window displays. There are so many churches, so many schools. We walk down darkened roads, winding roads, forgotten roads, trafficked city roads, dirt roads, and yes, some roads have been more or less traveled than other roads. All of them, it seems, are lined with graveyards. At home, my students gaze out their windows at sunsets, snow, rain, or playing children who remind them of their younger selves. I try to make my dinner. Not oysters, not a peach, not madeleines, food content to be itself, a taco that's just a taco. But oh, the olives. Oh, the red and juicy heart of the tomato. And the onions, damn it. The onions always make me cry. All right, I'll give you the 2-poem warning. One more sort of dark one, and then one that tries to be happier. Guess which one this is? I read about this study. Again, I've got an epigraph on the poem, and I've put it up here in the block, that a psychologist conducted where they conducted surveys, and I don't know exactly what their procedure was, but they surveyed lots of people to see what profession had the most incidence of, what do they call it? Mental illness such as suicide attempts, depression, stuff like that. So it turns out artists. Artists are pretty bad about this. And then who among the artists are particularly prone to these ailments? Writers. And who among the writers? Poets, especially female poets. They just really narrow it down and make you feel bad about yourself. And he calls it the Sylvia Plath effect. Turns out if you're a male nonfiction writer, you're fine. If you're Bill Bryson, you're cool. You're having a good life. If you're a female poet, maybe not so much. So this is sort of about that, this so-called Sylvia Plath effect. So I put up a couple of pictures of Plath. Here's one where she looks a little more tortured, the way that we tend to think of her, but here's, this rather nice one where she's playing with her children. She wasn't always so gloomy. All right, this is suicide. Such a lovely word we mustn't use. Already friends are keeping an eye on us. They call on weekends or when they haven't heard from us in a while, just to check in. Our co-workers are wary. If we crack a few too many Plath jokes, we find ourselves in mandatory counseling. And Mom, who never trusted poetry, sighs and sets another roll upon our plates. We'd like to ask each other, take a poll. How often do you think about it? Weekly? Every day? Every fulsome night? We want to find out what's normal, but we know we're not the right ones to ask. Studies blame the solipsistic I. Too much introspection fucks us up. I disagree. If poets are in love with language, then how could we not be seduced by suicide? Those silky vowel glides, the sideways glance, all sibilance and curves. It makes me think of a slinky red dress. That color has always looked good on me. Yeah, I know. My mother's going to call. What did that mean? What's that about you? All right, this is the last one. And this was sort of pulling together the two themes that I was trying to talk about in this reading. It's sort of a persona poem and sort of not. Philip Larkin is a poet that some of you may know, a British poet. I know Emerson is a big fan of Larkin's, as am I. And he was a really, really terrific writer. Probably not the most fun guy to hang out with in life. I mean, he looks like a party waiting to happen, right? But maybe not. He was sort of grouchy and gloomy, and he enjoyed being gloomy, and it was, you know, it was really his favorite pastime. And he never got married. He had a girlfriend, here she is, Monica, for years and years and years, but he also had other girlfriends, and it was just sort of terrified of marriage. His own parents' marriage hadn't gone so well. So again, I started with what if? What would it be like to be married to Philip Larkin? Probably not so fun. But, you know, for the sake of argument, I tried to imagine how you would make it work, what you would have to do to be married to this guy, who so famously did not want to be married. So this poem is called Larkin and Wife, and it's in the voice of a character sort of like me, but imagining being married to Larkin, who's been dead for some time, so I'm afraid I don't really have a chance with him. There are a few details in the poem from his biography by Andrew Motion. I think the only one that I really need to explain is that there's a mention in here of Larkin's fondness for pornography. He liked it. So that's in the poem. Some other little things, some references to him liking jazz and some stuff like that. And there's some allusions to one of his poems at the end. But I think that's all you need to know. So I'll finish with this one, and thanks again for coming. Larkin and Wife. A soft-boiled egg, rye toast with jam and soy links, the day's first compromise. Philip steeps his tea while my French press takes the plunge. He blinks owlishly against the morning sun, pats my ass, and we bear our cups to separate offices. They say writers shouldn't wed, at least not with other writers. And yet they do. And no one is surprised when soon the rumors of drink and lovers fly, something breaks, and indignant manuscripts go off to press. My history and Philip's chronic dread. We'd like to think we've learned from our own fears, and so we chart our course of days in love and watchfulness, giving quarter here or there, drawing gracious boundaries, taking care to build what battlements we need as hollow, false-fronted things. Philip's porn, for instance. The magazines stay nestled in his well-loved drawer, and I pretend the unfamiliar muse is just my great galumphing creature's fancy. A bit of bondage, a spot of spanking, it's only play, no real pain. The safe word is Ted Hughes. It's another poet. Larkin hated him. And in return, he suffers my movies, my cats, my vegetarian diet. They give him matter for complaint, and that makes him happy. Music is hard. I tolerate his jazz, have learned to like Bechet. He endures my Dylan. At Wilco, kills his hearing aid. It's hard. Of course it's hard. Isn't he the poet of deprivation, death, and gloom, more than half in love with his own misery? Aren't I my own unique disaster? But doesn't being with him create for me the contrasting alien role of optimist? Taps of slippered feet on floorboards, sighs of books easing from shelves, these float to me from down the hall, and I have learned to hear in them not the tumblers of a lock, but domesticity's quiet hum, like surf upon a rocky western shore. A woman, like a man, is guardian of her own happiness. Yet when at night his weight, like ballast, shifts our mattress down, even though he frets or snores, Yet there is my companion on the long black ship. There is love, my fellow passenger. Thanks. I'm sure you're burning with them. Yo. Where? Ben. Oh, hi, Ben. Mm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree. Ben, if you couldn't hear, he was asking about telling the truth through a mask, like in a persona. Yeah, I mean, what I tell my students is every time there's a voice speaking on the page, it's a character. Even if it's a voice that says I and seems a lot like you, that's a version of yourself that you've created. But yeah, I think writing through a persona or some kind of mask can be really liberating. Say stuff that otherwise you wouldn't say. I'd be embarrassed to write a real poem in my own voice and use a word like love. But if I were imagine myself married to Philip Larkin, sure, okay, I can do that. Probably wouldn't happen though. He was so grouchy. Yes, sir. Oh, thanks. Yep. That helps. Yeah, I mean, some readers read really badly. You can listen to recordings of Robert Frost, for example. I think Frost is a pretty terrible reader. Whose woods these are, I think I know. He's awful. But I try to read, expressively and put a little personality in there. But I think it does help to read it out loud because it's meant to be heard. You're supposed to be listening for rhymes and meter and alliteration and all the fun sound effects that we put in there. I do think you miss something if you're just reading silently on the page. Tiffany? It's always fun to write as the devil. That's a lot of fun.